Welcome to the show, Pim. I'm so excited that you're here to talk about something that is not so near and dear to the hearts of so many people that I work with, and obviously the people you work with as well, and that is cravings, sugar cravings, and that kind of thing. So, first of all, before we dive into that, I'd like you to talk to us about how you got into dealing with that with your clients.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm really happy to be able to share this because there is a solution to it, and I never knew. So
You're
I've
welcome.
actually been a sugar. Thank you. I've been a sugar addict for as long as I can remember. So I haven't. I don't have a lot of memories from when I was a kid, but I do remember when I was about 6 years old. My mum is not an early bird, so I used to go up in the morning, take the chair out, climb up into the cupboards where she was hiding the cookies from me, because she knew that if I knew that they were cookies, I would be nagging at her all day long to get those cookies. So she was always hiding them, and I knew where they were.
Okay.
So that's kind of my first memory from what I was doing as a kid. So obviously, as with most people, that just escalates and it gets worse and worse. And I was never overweight or obese or anything like that because I've always been very active. I was a personal trainer. I got a degree in nutrition, and still I was addicted to sugar. And I sort of thought that I'm eating healthy, so it's okay that I'm having that on top.
Hmm.
But as most people, I wanted to quit, and I thought I'll stop it tomorrow, and then I will stop it tomorrow, and maybe I'll manage one day, but then I would eat it the day after. So this just went on and on and on until about 5, 6 years ago, actually. So it's been a lot of years of just binging on sugar, eating. And the best thing that happened to me during that period was probably going low carb, because that took care of the physiological cravings, but not the
Hmm.
mental ones. So I try to distinguish between those two. And I actually got a coach, but not for any sort of eating problems. But as it just happened, she had specialized in weight loss. And I
Okay.
was like, well, that's not my problem. So I didn't kind of pay attention to that. And we were working on other things and things were going well. And then she had the book and I just read it. And I was like, wow, okay, maybe I can apply this to my cravings, because it's the same thing. Overeating anything is the same thing as
Right.
overeating sugar. So I started practicing what she was teaching, and it worked.
That's
And
amazing.
it's amazing, and it's so simple. When you do it, it works. If you think that you can do it in your head, or getting too comfortable and think, oh yeah, I got this, you're gonna fall down again. So when I was doing it, I was like, why is this not common knowledge? Why doesn't anyone know about this?
Hmm.
Because I say that it's easy. It's very, very simple to do, but it's not so easy to actually
Right.
put into practice, as with anything when you're battling your own brain.
Yeah.
So that's where it kind of came from, because I've been working with people, helping people with their diet for most of my life in some sort of fashion, or their exercise or whatever. Why am I not helping people with this? Because this is something that I've really been struggling with. And I'm not going to say that I'm perfect. I still have, episodes of, it was a while ago now, but when I kind of go back to, yeah, I know how to do this, so I can just eat sugar for a little bit and then I can go back. But
Hmm.
every time you do that, you have to go through everything, and it's a pain, and you have to put effort in. So having a coach is probably the thing that will keep you accountable and that
Right.
helped me the most. So when I'm doing it on my own, I can still do it, but it requires more discipline, shall we say.
Yeah, the
But
check-in, because especially you with your background, you know the information, you know what you should be eating to maintain your health, but having the information doesn't always really equate to follow through with
oh God,
dealing
no.
with what's in our brains and how we navigate our day to day. So,
Yeah, I think that's something that I always struggle with, because I've always been intelligent, I've always done well in school, and I'm always seeking out knowledge. I'm learning a lot of things, I know a lot of things, and then when it comes to putting into practice, I'm really not the best person.
right. And
And
that's very common.
Yes, but I
Reads them.
thought there's something wrong with me. Like, why can't I do it? I'm so intelligent. Why can't I do this? What's wrong with me? You know, those
Right.
kind of questions. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So that leads into my question about addiction. So you've been dealing with this since you were a little child, as you were talking about, finding the cookies before your mom would wake up in the morning. Um, so this is something that's been ongoing. So would you say that food addiction really is a thing?
Yes, for sure. For me, I mean, I have no doubt. But if you would go to anyone who specializes in addiction, well, I say anyone, but
Hmm.
most people who do probably would say no, it's not an
Hmm.
addiction.
Hmm.
But when you take, so the American, what they call the Psychiatric Association, they have like a questionnaire or a sheet where you can kind of, they have, it's 11 questions or something like that, called the SM5. So that's the 5th edition. It's the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of
Yeah.
Mental Disorders.
Hmm.
So if anyone wants to look that up. So there are 11 questions on there, and they use the same questions, but they tweak it towards the addiction that in question. So I actually did it, and I changed it to being about refined sugar or refined carbohydrates or refined foods, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And I did it on myself. And if you have if you answer yes to 6 or more of those, you have a severe substance use disorder. And
Okay.
I scored 10 out of 11.
Okay. Well, that would apply then.
Yes, I would say so. So I'm just kind of looking at him like, if you use these questions to assess whether I'm addicted to sugar or the sweet taste in some
Hmm.
form, I'm definitely addicted to it, and there's no question about it. But I think we just don't want to admit it because it's food, and you have the whole sugar industry, and that is a lot of money. You, if everyone would quit sugar overnight, what would happen to our economy?
Hmm.
So no, everyone is not going to do that, but I think when it comes to food, there is so much politics there as well, and people
Yes.
lobbying against it, that it's going to be hard to get through to the authorities and have that changed to, yes, there is something called sugar addiction or food addiction. Although there,
Hmm.
there are people that recognize that, but they are the minority, I would say.
Well, and I think it's pretty widely known and understood that addictions of any kind are very, very hard to deal with and hard to overcome. And I think food sometimes can be, I don't know, I'm not going to speak for people who have other addictions to other things, but I feel like food addiction could be harder to get over than a lot of the other things because we actually need food to survive. Unlike, we do not need alcohol or whatever to survive, we
Yeah.
need food to survive. So it's like another added element that can make that process of dealing with our addiction to food a lot more difficult to overcome. So,
Yeah.
and I hear people always just say, well, I just don't have willpower. I don't have the willpower to do this and that and the other thing when it comes to their, diet, or, changing their eating to, include more whole foods or exercising or whatever. They don't have the willpower. What do you say to that about willpower?
Yeah, so willpower doesn't work. I love this question because everyone thinks it's just about willpower. I
Right.
don't know how many times I've heard it, especially working in the fitness industry. You can hear a lot of comments about people like, oh, well, they're just fat because they don't have the willpower to do
Right.
this or that, do that. And that is so unfair. And it's, you know, it kind of makes my skin crawl when people say that. And let's say we have an amount of willpower. When we wake up in the morning, we rarely give in to any cravings, etc., because we have plans, and today I'm not going to do that. But throughout the day, our willpower just get robbed because we are taking care of things
Hmm.
constantly. We have to make decisions throughout the day. And that is one of the things that I'm using, is that we always make the decisions the day before about what we're going to eat. And that
Hmm.
just takes it out of question. We don't have to think about it, and we don't have to use any willpower to deal with the cravings. Well, we have to deal with the cravings still, but not with willpower. So Yeah, when you're using willpower as well, one thing that happens is that you have this inner conflict with yourself. So let's say someone brings me a cake and I'm like, oh my God, cake. I really want that, but I shouldn't. So then I had to use the willpower to not eat the cake.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably familiar with it in the conversation in your head. It's like, yeah, you should just have one bite. No, I don't want to. Oh, come on, you just need to taste it. You don't have to eat a lot. Yes, you do. I want it all. So you have that, and that is just going to deplete your willpower. So if you manage to push that away today, what's most likely going to happen is tomorrow you're going to have a binge on something because you were so good yesterday, you have another excuse to do it, and it's just going to come back with a vengeance. So it's almost like pushing a beach ball in the water and just holding it there, and once you let go, it's just going to explode and come up. And that's pretty much what we're doing when we're doing something with willpower. So for most people, it can work. You can maybe do it for a couple of weeks, maybe a month, but eventually you're going to cave in and you're probably going to do a lot worse than you did previously.
That's why most New Year's resolutions that include diet or exercise types of goals are out the window by middle of January.
Yes.
You know, they have willpower for 2 weeks to get them through, and then it fights back. Like you said, the beach ball underwater pops up and we're done. Exactly. And then it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, and then they will sit at home and they will just eat popcorn and ice cream in front of the TV instead. It's like, yes, I have deserved this, and the weight's going to pack on, and you're going to weigh more than you did in December.
Right. Yep. Just a terrible, terrible cycle. So, you know, how can we change this addictive behavior when willpower is not going to get us through?
So what I tell everyone to do is, first of all, you need to know, you need to be aware and present in the moment. So we often use food to kind of hide from that because we don't want to feel uncomfortable, we don't want to feel stressed, we don't want to feel sad. Some people don't even want to feel joy because they get scared of those strong emotions. Mm-hmm. So we eat for all sorts of reasons. And now I'm just talking about the mental type of cravings. There is also something that I call physiological cravings, which comes from when you consume too many carbohydrates, especially sugar, you can get blood sugar swings and then you get cravings because of that. But that's not what I'm talking about right now. So that's a different issue that I'm also dealing with. But when it comes to the emotional eating, and I just want to say that I never thought I was an emotional eater. Okay. I thought emotional eating, those are people that they're stressed at work and then they go home and fill themselves up with whatever food is that they fancy just to relieve their stress or whatever. Or they're upset because they broke up with a boyfriend and then they're going to eat, etc. Mm-hmm. And I've never done that. But what I'm doing is that when I am bored or when I feel restless or when I want to procrastinate because I don't want to work, I always go and check out my cupboards. I know that there isn't anything there, and I still go there. And that's my way of escaping those feelings. So yes, I am an emotional eater. So there are many forms that can take. So even if you think that you're not, just kind of have a little think about why it is that you're doing it and in what situations. Because a lot of the time you're going to notice that there is a feeling there that you don't really want to feel. There's something that you want to put the lid on and not feel as strongly. So just jumping back then, I went on a tangent there. It's okay. But you want to kind of identify what it is that is triggering you. So we want to find the trigger. And that trigger can be anything. It can be a smell, it can be a sound, it can be a place, it can be just when you're doing something. So a good example is like whenever you're brushing your teeth, you might also be looking in the mirror or, looking for pimples or whatever it is that people doing when they're brushing their teeth. It's things that always go hand in hand. So I might be driving the same way home from work every day and I'm passing the supermarket and I'm used to just stopping, going in to get something. And that might trigger my cravings. So it can be literally anything. So an example for me was that a huge trigger for me was actually eating dinner. I needed something sweet after dinner every day. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't get that, yeah. And I thought, because, being a nutritionist and all, I thought, oh my God, that's because I'm not insulin sensitive and my blood sugar is probably all over the place. I read all sorts of things that there might be a delay in my insulin release, and therefore my blood sugar might be going down, and all sorts of things. But it's not really about that. That was just actually a habit and something I got used to. So you have the whole habit loop, which starts with a trigger. And that trigger will trigger you to think something. So you will have a thought about it. So eating dinner made me think, I need something sweet. And that is triggering me on my physiological cravings, which is I start to salivate. I'm like one of those Pavlov's dogs, if you've heard about them.
Yeah.
I just start salivating. Other people feel, many people actually do that, I've noticed now, but I didn't know that when I first started observing. But some people feel almost like their whole bodies are being taken over by something, or they almost start shaking and they got this tension in the solar plexus or whatever. It's like this whole body experience when you can pay attention to it. But I know the one thing that is always there is the salivation. So if I know my triggers and I know how I respond to a craving, I can interrupt it.
Okay.
But it always starts with awareness. So if you're not aware of what's going on, it's going to be hard to stop it.
Yeah. And I feel like when I'm working with people and going through their intake forms and I go through their intake form, they fill out a long process of objective questions. And then I talk with them, we go through things more subjectively. Sometimes it's night and day. They're not even aware that they have certain symptoms or are thinking different things. And this isn't specific to food cravings, of course, that I'm working on, but they're just so unaware of what their body is telling them in general. So I can about imagine, the lack of awareness sometimes dealing with people wondering why they're craving things and sweets or whatever it might be for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's my nemesis as well. That's why I'm saying like the cravings and the salivation is like the big thing for me, because I don't feel a lot of other things regularly in my body when I'm looking for the cravings. And I can sit there and I can just feel like maybe I feel a little bit of tension almost up in my throat. It's like it's kind of anticipating something to come down there, but I'm not the right person to ask like what can you feel, because some of my clients, they just feel so many things in their body and I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing, lucky you. Because you can pinpoint all of that, and when you do, you know that you have a craving. So if you can recognize how it feels in your body, even if your brain isn't really aware of what's going on, it would connect the two and it would kind of alert you to that, oh my God, there's a craving going on here. So you need to be cautious about what's happening so you don't go and give in to that craving.
Sure.
So yeah, absolutely. And I'm not very good at it.
I'm sure it's a long process to kind of become aware. And that's where, again, it goes back to the importance of, identifying that there's something that you don't like about what you're doing with your food and reaching out to a coach, someone outside of yourself that can help you look into what your behavior is and what you're eating, and to help to identify those triggers and then help remedy that. So when people come to you, this is sort of a two-part question. When people come to you, how do you start working with them? And then how long does it take to get rid of cravings, if you can even get rid of them at all?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a silly answer here, but to actually get rid of the cravings only takes a few hours. And it's like, what? Are you kidding me? So what I'm talking about, that actually you're never getting rid of cravings, but you're not going to see the cravings as you see them now. You're going to be aware that they are there, but they're not going to trigger you. So that's what I mean when I say you can get rid of them in a few hours. Sure. So when I'm talking about a few hours, so let's say you probably heard something along the lines that to get really good at something, you need to practice for 10,000 hours to get a professional at whatever it is. But what you actually need to do is a few hours of deliberate practice of not giving in to the cravings. So let's say a craving actually only lasts a few minutes maybe, or maybe less for some people. But if you're paying attention and if you are going through the whole thing, you're observing the trigger, you're observing your thoughts, you then observing your body, and then you choose to implement a different response, which in my case, I do recommend my clients to do nothing, because that's easy to do and it's easy to do anywhere.
Right.
Some people like to go and do push-ups or walk around the block or whatever, but it's not always practical.
Sure.
But you can do that. So that way we interrupt the pathway, we kind of build a new pathway and create a new habit. And that takes time. But if you do that intentionally every single time you have a craving, you're strengthening this new pathway, and eventually that will become your new normal. But let's say it just takes a few minutes. So still, you have to do that many times. But in total, the amount of time that you're going to spend doing it is not actually more than, let's say, 10, 15 hours maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on who you are, how focused you are when you're doing it, etc., and how strong the other pathway is. So for me, that one's quite strong. And what most of my clients do, and what I have been doing, is that you do it and it's really easy to do. You do get a lot of success and it feels really good. And you think, oh my God, I got this. And then you get lazy and you fall off.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, you kind of go back. You're not losing what you have been doing, but you kind of go back and you're strengthening the old pathway again, which is kind of counterproductive. Sure. But that's fine, because every single time you practice the new behavior, you're actually strengthening that pathway and you're one step closer to where you need to go.
So it just builds on it. Every time you make the choice to stay away from that craving when it hits, or to not allow you to fall into it, then you just keep building and building and building until that becomes the norm.
Yes, and I love what you say, you're not allowing yourself, because that's the key as well. We don't want to suppress ourselves, because that's going to be about willpower then. So we want to allow the cravings to just be there. Right. We want to see them, we want to allow them, and we want to be okay with them just being there. So if I can look at this from the outside, I can see that I had a thought and then I got this response in my jaw and I started salivating, and I look at it almost like a scientist. I can kind of step out of my body, and then I'm sort of disconnecting emotionally to this. So if I can see myself as just a human being that is having a physiological response to a trigger, it kind of looks a bit silly. It's like, why would I need to go and eat that thing? It doesn't make any sense when you use your rational part of the brain. Right. But when you're all emotionally wrapped up in it, it's almost compulsory. So that's part of the process, is that just look at it. And I always have my clients write it down. Mm-hmm. And all I need is 2 or 3 lines. This is my trigger. This is what I was thinking. This is how it feels in my body. And this is what I'm doing. If you can do that, most of the time the craving is gone by the time you finish writing. Sometimes you have to sit with it a bit longer. Mm-hmm. But that way you just acknowledge that it's there. And you're not fighting it. You're not doing anything about it. And it's just peaceful, rather than fighting and say, oh my God, I can't have that. I can't have that. Because that's never going to work, unfortunately. I've tried that many times.
Well, I think everybody talks about that. The more I tell myself I can't have it, the more I want it. It's like the kid in the candy store, scenario. It's very much in our psychology or our biology or whatever it is to
absolutely,
want what we can't have, or what we say we can't have. And so I know in other kinds of food and eating behavior types of books I've read and articles I've read in my lifetime, of just studying this kind of thing, is we almost need to desensitize ourselves to the foods that we hold. Like if we're always the person who craves I don't know, ice cream or something like that, why is it that ice cream has such this value, so much more value to us, that's our go-to every time we're feeling anxious or whatever it might be, whatever the trigger is? If we can somehow desensitize ourselves to the ice cream, then it can kind of normalize out, rather than I can never have ice cream again. Then that's all you're gonna want anytime something doesn't sit right.
And that's quite interesting, because with most of my clients, I have had 1 or 2 that said, I never want to touch sugar again. Mm-hmm. but most of them just want to live a normal life and not be obsessed with it.
Right.
So there is a bit more work involved in doing this, but there is a way of actually learning to eat sugar in moderation. And a lot of people say, no, you can't do it. Either you do it or you don't do it. But it involves a lot of work on your part. So it's actually easier probably to not touch it ever again, if you like. But mentally, I'm not prepared to go there yet myself.
Right.
Because it's like, well, I'm never going to have that again. That's never going to work. And then it's just out the window. So it's all about, first of all, retraining your brain, obviously, to the cravings, but then also using the prefrontal cortex. So that's the planning part of the brain, the rational part of the brain. And that's why I always tell my clients to plan 24 hours ahead. So if I have super strong cravings today, I can actually say that, okay, tomorrow I'm actually going to have some chocolate. And I'm going to have this chocolate, I'm going to have this much, and I'm going to have it after dinner. And then all I have to do is stick to that. But I also have all my clients, when you're talking about desensitizing, when they've gone through a certain period of time, when they think like, yeah, I got this, then I usually have them go back and they have to plan to have something that they really, really like, because I want them to pay attention. So we literally, what they have to do is they get this thing and they have to eat it and have to pay attention to it when they eat it, what it tastes like, what it smells like, how it feels in their mouth, and how good it feels when they're eating it. Usually what they notice is that after 5, maybe 4, maybe 6 bites, it starts to not taste so great anymore.
Right.
And then I want them to stop.
Yeah.
And this way, if you start doing this practice of really paying attention to what it's like when you're eating it, and not just eating it because, oh my God, I need to eat it. If you know what you're doing and you're paying attention to it, you don't really want that much of it.
Right.
We can learn to just eat a little and appreciate it when we're doing it. And that can become a new thing, but it requires some work. So it's not something that you do overnight, obviously, but it is possible.
Right. So you can have those, foods that we maybe thought are off limits. We could have them in normal amounts, in an amount that other people wouldn't be shocked by the amount the person might be eating of it. So I think, like you said, that takes time and some desensitization over time, and just planning it, like you said, planning for it and just sticking with it and call it a day. Enjoy it, appreciate it, and then just move on to the next thing, and then not that cycle of, beating yourself up for having, said food item, just totally retraining the brain for sure. Absolutely.
And I think it's such a great thing to do if you can do it. And in the beginning, we have, I mean, when I'm there, they don't have a problem with kind of doing the whole practice. But if I'm not there, it's easy to just like, well, I could do it last time, so I can do it now. So you need to really be paying attention and be careful with what you're doing. Just because you know how to do something doesn't always mean that you will do it. And that's why I want them to practice it with me before I leave them and let them get on with their lives.
Right.
So that they know that, it is possible to do it. So we're trying to kind of foolproof them for every situation. What am I going to do? It's a wedding and people are just like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. It's like, okay, visualize what's going to happen. Because when you can visualize how you're going to behave in a certain situation, you can almost practice. It's like a practice run for the wedding, and then you just do it when you're there. So if you have trained your prefrontal cortex to follow your plan, that's actually not too hard to do.
Right.
But there are so many kind of moving pieces and things that you need to practice, and you just have to trust the process, do it, and then you will get there. And not think, oh, well, that's easy, I can do that, but I just can't be bothered practicing it. Then you're not gonna, it's not gonna be a habit, unfortunately.
Well, and it helps to build confidence to just keep repeating that. And so that you can feel empowered when you go to that wedding or whatever event it might be, and that you can stay in your power and stay in control of those habits.
Absolutely. And sometimes I just tell my clients, you know what, you can plan for having a day of doing, whatever you fancy that day, because I don't want you to beat yourself up about it. So if you're going to go to that wedding and you're just going to drink and eat and to, fill your boots up, if that is what you really want to do, plan for it. And don't feel bad about it. And then you go back on your normal plan the next day and everything's okay.
Just get back to normal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't have a week-long binge just because we did that one day.
Right. It doesn't have to. And I hear that so many times, people will say, well, so if I'm doing poorly, I just say, well, I'll start on Monday because, maybe it's Wednesday and they'll like, well, I ate bad today, so I'll just start on Monday. So they have this 5 days of just, poor choices and just, getting further from their goals or, taking steps back towards their goals instead. So yeah, one thing doesn't have to totally wreck the whole plan.
And then you have 5 days of giving into your cravings and, strengthening that old pathway in your brain that you don't want to strengthen. So stick to your plan. And if the plan was do whatever you want, that's fine. And then we move on and we continue. It's as easy as that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you work with your clients, do you go through do you have a program or a package, or how does that work? I know you have a complimentary coaching call that I'll put in the show notes so people can access you that way. But how do you typically work with people? Is it more one-on-one or a group setting, or how do you do that?
I typically work one-on-one with people, and we do that over 12 weeks. But I like to use my time with people, mostly coaching them through the emotional stuff and what's been going on and how to handle problems or whatever it is that might be coming up. So I've actually put together a course which is called 6 Weeks to Quit, which I give to all my clients for free, which they have to watch. So that's actually 6 modules. You don't have to do one module a week, but it's kind of good if you do that.
Sure.
But we're also there are lots of worksheets that will kind of give them, it will kind of force you to think in a certain way, answer certain questions, and make you see things that you might not have seen before. And then we can discuss those in the coaching calls, or I've just helped them with whatever they need help with. But it's a lot about understanding how your brain works, what certain things you need to do to get over it, how you need to sit with it. I'm having one video which is actually talking you through how to do the cravings management and all of that. So there's a lot of material there that I don't want to sit and teach people one-to-one. So that's just what I have to watch on the side. And then we do the coaching one-to-one.
Okay.
So what I've been doing lately is, because people tend to need me more in the beginning, obviously, is that I actually do unlimited coaching. There are shorter coaching calls, but they can book as many as they like during a week. And we can just hook up quickly, because a lot of people seem to need a lot of support and a lot of contact in the beginning, and that seems to work really, really well to keep people on track. So that's a new thing I've tried, and so far I haven't had anyone abusing it. There's a little bit more people might not be able to turn up every time, but in general it works really well, I would say.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's probably a little bit of learning curve that they need to go through in the first part of the program. So it's nice that you offer that, but it sounds like a very hands-on, personalized approach. And how one person is craving is not going to be the same as someone else, and so you need a different approach and different coaching and support through that. So that sounds like exactly what you're offering. So
absolutely,
that'll be great. So I'll put your freebie, your complimentary coaching call in that. And it looks like it's, how long is it? 45 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. That's a nice amount of times. People can kind of feel that out and see how you guys could work together and be a good fit for helping people quit their cravings.
Absolutely. So during that call, I don't just like talk about that. Actually, if you want to book in for that, bring your questions and what your struggles are. And even if you decide that you don't want to work with me, I want to provide some sort of value so that I can help you move towards your goal, and I could probably give you a few tools that you can use and just implement them,
For
and
sure.
hopefully actually get some part of the way at least.
Yeah, that sounds great. They'll have some good takeaways, I'm sure. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on before we sign off?
No, I think just start with being aware of what's happening. That's the most important thing, because if you're not aware of what's going on, you're never going to be able to quit. So
Right.
just pay attention to what's happening in your environment, in your head, in your body, those kind of things, and write it down. Learn what's happening, and you're going to start seeing more and more things, or feeling more and more things, and just pay attention to them. And for some people, that's enough. I mean, I've had clients, or not clients, I've had people talking to me for 45 minutes, and then like, oh, well, I'll get back to you, and then I don't hear from them. 2 months later, I get an email and said, you know what, you helped me. I haven't touched sugar since then. And if that's all that is needed, I'm happy.
Right.
Those people are not generally, as I don't think that they are actually addicted. They just have a bad habit. So if you have a bad habit, you might be helped by 45 minutes. And you might be helped by just paying attention to what's going on, because maybe that is just the piece that is missing for you, that you're not really aware of what's happening.
Right. Yeah, that alone is really good. That's good support right there. Just that's a good takeaway for people to start looking into their behavior. Anytime you're craving something or wanting to eat something after you are, physically full, you don't need any more food to, keep you going. What is going on around you? Just that awareness, that's key to really dial into that and to figure out what's going on there. So that's a really good tip. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it. All the information will be in the show notes, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.